Ain't so bad. Ain't so bad. Ain't so bad. Come on, ain't so bad. Ain't nothing.
Hey guys, I've been wanting to make a How Tough is Sylvester Stallone video for a while now and was inspired to do so sooner rather than later based on a response one of my other videos got. That video in question was titled, "Of all the action movie stars, who's the toughest one? Like, who would win a real fight?" The response occurred in the StalloneZone.com website forum. So one of the members, Judge Rico, had posted that video in a thread, and I made a comment in there saying, since Sylvester Stallone is one of these guys, worked with and knows a lot of these guys, I'd be very curious to know what he thinks. And there's a couple of other comments there. One of the guys said, probably stay them Dolph and Atkins, which username Sylvester Stallone in the forum replied and said, me. So a lot of people are telling me that really is the Sylvester Stallone, and I believe it to be true. I don't think the site owner and forum moderator Craig Zabla would let anyone else have the screen name Sylvester Stallone. In another message, Stallone said, "It is not just skill, sometimes it's just a willingness to take punishment and fight on."
It ain't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
He continues, "Are you going to be a real pro? Of course not. But movie fighters are basically just posers who would absolutely call 911 before taking a legitimate punch."
I disagree.
Now, some of you may say or even think, isn't he kind of contradicting himself since Stallone himself is a, quote, movie fighter? Well, not necessarily, and here's plenty of proof, which I'll present in this video. How tough is Sylvester Stallone?
Go, Tommy! I didn't hear no bell.
Oh, by the way, make sure to check out a previous video I did titled, How Strong Was Sylvester Stallone? That was a video I had a lot of fun with. I did my best to put out actual numbers Stallone was able to put up in the gym based on my research, but I also threw in some jokes that tended to fly right over some people's heads based on some of the comments it received. So let's talk about and ask the question, how strong was Sylvester Stallone? I'm going to say pretty damn strong. He did just beat that guy arm wrestling who outweighed him by like 100 pounds. For the record, I am aware that Stallone never actually beat 5-time world arm wrestling champion Rick Zumwalt in Over the Top. I know it's not a documentary. It is a great movie though. So anyway, if you like this kind of Stallone content, want to keep seeing more, make sure to help support the channel by hitting that like button, subscribe if you're not yet subscribed, share the video, help get it out there. And now, without further ado, let's find out exactly how tough Sylvester Stallone really is. First things first, let's talk about Stallone's resilience, which I believe is a precursor to building toughness. Psychologists define resilience as a process of adapting well in the face of adversity. In a perfect case of art imitating life, we need to look no further than the original Rocky film. Stallone was inspired by the real-life fight between Muhammad Ali and Chuck Wepner, who ended up making it to the 15th round in a true show of heart, grit, and determination. Motivated by that spectacle, it only took 3.5 days for Stallone to pen the first draft of Rocky. After writing the script for Rocky, the producers he pitched it to were interested in the screenplay but not in Stallone himself, who was more or less an unknown actor at the time.
He is not a professional. I only work with professionals.
Having roughly $100 in the bank and struggling to make ends meet, Stallone even went as far as selling his dog since he couldn't afford to feed him anyway. For the script, Stallone was offered more money than he'd ever seen, but much like the character Rocky himself, Stallone got his $1,000,001 shot by sticking to his guns and refused to sell it unless he could also star as the lead.
Rocky, do you believe that America is the land of opportunity?
Stallone said,
You know what? If I know in the back of my mind, if I sell this script and it does very, very well, I'm going to jump off a building.
Well, we all know how that turned out. Stallone started out a true underdog in life and in film who ended up overcoming the odds in both real life and in film. Stallone says, "You get nothing without struggle." The man puts so much of himself in his work. He's played a big part in writing and developing many of the characters he's portrayed ever since that original underdog story in Rocky 1. I believe many of these characters he's played are largely a representation of Stallone himself.
He thinks he's Rambo.
It's a perfect case of writing what you know, finding aspects of your story and characters that you deeply relate to. Much like Stallone himself, several of his characters are tough as nails.
I see him in the garden, but I never want to eat him.
I didn't say anything about snails. I said nails. Nails.
Oh, yeah.
I've done several videos on Stallone's preparation for his Rocky and Rambo films. Rocky 3, for example, was about the most extreme. The grueling workouts, the crazy dieting. He's even said in an Instagram post, I would literally go to the corner between rounds when I wasn't directing and try to get some blood back into my head so I could carry on with the complicated fight choreography. As far as his workouts go, there's no doubt Stallone's one of the hardest workers in the gym. Former Mr. Olympia and strongman competitor Franco Colombo recollected that Stallone was always up for doing more, pushing himself further, which unfortunately during Rocky II ended up causing him to tear his pec while getting in a bench press contest with Franco, who just happened to be one of the strongest guys around at the time. But working out in general, especially at a more extreme level, not only builds physical toughness but also mental toughness. Going to failure, absolute failure, has a lot more to do with the mind than the body in my opinion. It's easy to just quit a rep or two shy of true failure. Going to absolute failure, by the way, isn't necessarily always the best way to train, but there's certainly a time and a place for it. There's something else you develop though, a high threshold for pain.
No pain! No pain! No pain! No pain! No pain! No pain! Okay, take it to him! Take it to him!
I'm sure you've heard the quote, pain is weakness leaving the body. While there's certainly some truth to that, I'm not advocating the type of pain that results in long-lasting injury.
I can't stop my hands from shaking.
But even in those instances, going through something like that will make other things in your life easier to cope with. It'll make you tougher. Take Rambo First Blood for instance. In the scene where Rambo jumps off the cliff and injures himself on some of the branches on the way down, Stallone performed the stunt himself during the bottom portion of the fall, and in the process broke one of his ribs when he landed on a tree branch. Stallone remarks on the DVD commentary for the film that when Rambo screams in pain, he wasn't actually acting, it was real. I've actually broken a rib myself, and it's a real struggle just getting out of bed. I couldn't imagine what it must have been like for Stallone to continue filming a Rambo movie in that condition. It had to have at least been as hard as Van Damme fighting Attila with a broken rib at the end of Lionheart.
Hey, look at here. Yeah. You ready to get rich? Huh? Come on, throw a few. You ain't gonna beat him now if y'all fucked up. How you gonna beat him if y'all fucked up?
What's wrong?
Prior to First Blood, in Rocky II, Sylvester Stallone sparred former boxing champ Roberto Duran. For those who don't know, Duran implied he was Mike Tyson before Mike Tyson came along. Mike Tyson said, "Roberto Duran is my favorite fighter. I was ferocious and fearless like Duran." They don't call Duran Hands of Stone for nothing, and Sylvester Stallone voluntarily got to experience them firsthand. In preparation for Rocky III, Stallone decided once again to test out his level of toughness, this time with the heavyweight boxer Ernie Shavers, who Muhammad Ali said was the strongest puncher he's ever faced. Heavyweight legend Larry Holmes said of Shavers, "Ernie hit me harder than any other fighter, including Mike Tyson." Stallone, the beast that he is, must have wanted to experience what Ali and Holmes got to. Ernie Shavers was actually in consideration for the role of Clubber Lang, and Stallone wanted to test him out in the boxing ring. Shavers was of course pulling his punches, but Stallone said, "Don't hold back, Ernie.
I want you to hit me as hard as you can."
A hard shot from Shavers to Stallone's body would send the Italian stallion down. Stallone later said, "That nearly killed me. I went straight to the men's room and threw up." It's also worth mentioning that in Rocky III, Stallone let Hulk Hogan, aka Thunder Lips, more or less ragdoll him while making the film.
It's all fake, meatball! All fake!
Moving along to Rambo First Blood Part 2, we get a little more insight into Stallone's hardcore workouts and work ethic from none other than Richard Crenna, who played Colonel Troutman.
The man is nuts, because he's given himself things to do in this picture that nobody should ask of themselves.
You may scream. There is no shame.
I mean, you can't imagine what he put himself through. We'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. He would go in, work out on heavy weights, free weights, doing all kinds of exercises. We finished the day's work, a very hard day's work. He'd go back into the gym again and work out again.
From there, we moved to Rocky IV. Stallone said, "I've done a lot of movie fights, but I believe this is the best boxing fight in the history of cinema," which I tend to agree with, as I'm sure many of you do as well. Filming such an intense match against none other than powerhouse Dolph Lundgren was not exactly a walk in the park. In fact, Lundgren hit Stallone so hard in the chest while shooting the first round of their fight that Stallone's heart hit his breastbone and began to swell.
Whatever he hits, he destroys.
Had he not been sent to the ER and then intensive care, his heart would have continued to swell until he died.
He dies.
Rambo 3 would follow not long after, which was still made before the days of special effects, so they had to do everything for real. Rappelling out of helicopters, lying under a moving tank, running through explosions. But the most dangerous stunt of all was playing Buzkashi, which is the most dangerous game in the world. It involves grabbing the body of a 75-pound sheep, galloping several hundred yards on horseback and dropping it in the Circle of Triumph. During filming of that sequence, several horsemen went down, rupturing their spleens, another shattered both hips, and a third rider landed so hard that he went temporarily blind for several hours. Luckily for Stallone, he made it through more or less unscathed. What a tough guy. Lockup would soon follow and depict some of the most brutal football sequences ever filmed. No body doubles or stunt doubles were used during the filming of the football game, and things got so intense that Stallone claimed he almost broke his leg while filming.
You want more, Leone? We got more for you.
In the early 90s, Stallone would film Cliffhanger. Sylvester Stallone partly took on this project in an effort to help him conquer his fear of heights.
Running from your fear is more painful than facing it. And that's something I've always remembered.
Most guys aren't willing to do that, to face their fears head on. Of course, most guys aren't built tough like Stallone either. Let's fast forward to Rocky Balboa in 2006, Stallone's big comeback. Stallone, now in his late 50s, was more than happy toughing it out by taking shots from former light heavyweight champ Antonio Tarver.
I'm proud to say that every punch in the movie that you see that's a hit's a hit. And if it's a miss, we don't put a sound behind it to try to make it a hit.
The heavyweight champion of the world doesn't like getting hit. The fake former heavyweight champion of the world enjoys getting punched in the face. All right, now that's a good hit, right?
In 2008's Rambo, Stallone, who is now in his 60s, tore part of his quadriceps muscle on the first day of shooting. If having to deal with that injury wasn't bad enough while simultaneously directing and acting in the action-packed sequel, Stallone said while filming near Burma, he and the crew had shots fired above their heads by the Burmese military and they feared for their lives.
Aren't you going to say something?
I don't understand.
You should.
You mean a prayer?
Not for me, for them.
Add to that, on sunny days, temperatures on set reach 120 degrees. Stallone must just crave hard, difficult, and tough work. Of course, we need to mention 2010's The Expendables.
What mean expendable?
The ultimate action film. Early on, Stallone ended up injuring his leg, but that was just the warm-up.
You can inject this and put a shot right there. You'll feel really good. You can ice and elevate and take it easy.
Will it help accelerate the healing?
It does.
The tough guy that he is, Stallone wanted ex-WWE wrestler Steve Austin to really add some intensity to the fight scene. The result? Stallone literally broke his neck. Ivan Drago knew all the way back in the 80s exactly what Stallone was all about. So going back to that post in the Stallone Zone forums when Stallone says, "It's not just skill, sometimes it's just a willingness to take punishment and fight on."
What is it you said to the kid? It ain't about how hard you hit.
You are strong.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. Get up.
Let's go, get up!
Got something to say?
Yeah. Say it! First down!
While discussing how tough Sylvester Stallone is, we're just about to go full circle here.
When are you going to come full circle?
What are you talking about?
Starting off with Rocky 1 as an example of life imitating art and Stallone's own resilience, now we arrive near the end of this video with an example of art imitating life. Because in my opinion, Stallone is a real-life embodiment of Rocky 4. In this scene with Adrian, while talking about his opponent Drago, I think the real man, Stallone himself, is really just giving a metaphor for life, the way he actually lives his own. Stallone recounts the time he was 26, broke, going nowhere fast. He had his dog Butkus, his best friend, his confidant, the one thing that loved him for who he was. He knew he had hit rock bottom when he had to sell Butkus because he couldn't afford to feed him anymore. Life was beating him down and clearly winning.
You can't win!
No, maybe I can't win. Maybe the only thing I can do is just take everything he's got. But the baby, he's gonna have to kill me. And to kill me, he's gonna have the heart to stand in front of me. And to do that, he's gotta be willing to die himself. I don't know if he's ready to do that. I don't know.
Life wasn't there to simply beat down Stallone. It was there to test him, to make him tough, which it did.
It will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it.
And he ended up winning as a result. Now look back at your own life, reflect on the challenges, let it make you tougher so you have a chance to win too. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Is Sylvester Stallone the toughest man in Hollywood or what? Comment below.